everybody. We're recycling a topic this morning that we haven't talked about in a while. Defense is probably, if I were to pick one area of the game that is really maybe a smidge more important than the other aspects of the game, it would be defense, simply because you're on defense about half the time. And when your side is playing offense, to borrow a football term, some of the time you're the dummy. So you're not even playing the hand. So playing the hand, being the dummy, that's about half the time, but defense is at least half of it. So if you can be a good defender, then you don't necessarily have to be a superstar at playing the hand or bidding or using a lot of conventions or anything like that. Because if you can defend well, you'll end up coming out in a respectable spot most of the time. And improving defense for most newer players is one of the single fastest ways that you can improve your results. We spend a lot of time on bidding because there's so much to it, but defense is every bit as important, if not more so. So today we're going to talk about one aspect of defense that you don't often see addressed in classes on defense. Usually a defense class will start with opening leads, and then they'll talk about defensive signals, attitude, count, and suit preference. And then they talk about second hand play and third hand play and making a defensive plan, all of those things. But very seldom do you see a discussion of what style of defense should be adopted. And if you can learn to recognize the times when it is important to choose an active defense as opposed to a passive defense, you'll be way ahead of the game, and all the tools that you have learned in your defense class will be even more effective. So when talking about how you're going to defend a hand of bridge, there are 5 primary lines. In almost every single hand, one of these will occur, one of these types of defense. One of the most popular is forcing the declarer to rough. In other words, this is known as the forcing defense because we're forcing the declarer. It is the single most effective line of defense out there, and that particular style of defense takes precedence over all others when the conditions are right for forcing. There's active defense, in other words, getting in there and grabbing your tricks in a hurry. Passive defense, which, believe it or not, is the form of defense that should be employed most of the time. Most of the time, you should play passively, not breaking new suits for the declarer, just sending back a suit that he's already led rather than breaking a new one each time you take a trick. You can defend by trying to create trump tricks through promotion, or sometimes you want to lead trumps in order to cut down on the declarer's ability to rough losers, particularly in the dummy. Now, you have several ways of trying to figure out whether you're going to defend actively or passively. One of the most important is remembering the bidding. You can make inferences from the bidding, and also from the play up to the point of the hand where you currently are. You can make inferences from the bidding, say if, let's see, one of the, say the opener didn't use a support double when your partner bid over the responder, then you can infer that he does not have 3 cards in the responder suit, particularly support doubles are used mostly with major suit responses. So that is a negative inference. You can make a positive inference if the responder just simply takes a preference to the opener's first bid suit, and you can pretty much be certain that he does not have 3-card support if he has just taken a preference, because that indicates a minimum responding hand. You can also count points. When you see the dummy, we've talked about using the number rule on defense. The minute the dummy hits the table, you think about, well, let's see, they're in a game contract, so let's give them about 26 points. I have 8 points in my hand. So how many does that leave for my partner? Could my partner have an entry? Well, if he has 6 points, yeah, he could have an ace. He could have a couple of kings. So yes, he could have an entry. So counting points, particularly the minute the dummy hits the table, is something that both defenders should do when they're thinking about how they're going to defend. When the declarer is making his plan for playing the hand, the defenders should be thinking about what they can figure out from the bidding, what the opening lead means. You know, what if you're the partner of the opening leader, you want to interpret that opening lead. You want to count some points if they're in a invitational level contract rather than a game contract, you should give them about 23 points between them. That's 2 no trump or a 3-level bid. They will have about 23 points. That usually means they wandered around trying to get to game and just couldn't bid it. So they probably have about 23 points between them. So you should subtract your total from 17 rather than 14 in that case. And if they're in a part score contract, then you should subtract your number of points from 19. They will have 19 to 21, and you'll have 19 to 21, or you'll see some sources that call it 18 to 22 and 18 to 22. Means the points are roughly equally divided between the two sides. So you can count points. Defenders can use signaling. I know a lot of you don't, but I want to encourage you to think about adopting particularly an attitude signal when your partner leads. If you're not playing high to try to win the trick, then try to, say if your partner leads an ace, if promising the king, if you have the queen or if you have a doubleton, you have 3rd round control. So you should encourage him by playing a high card. You don't have to adopt all the defensive signals. You can adopt the attitude signal only on the opening lead to start with. High card means I like it. Low card means I don't. Please think about switching. So I know it seems intimidating when we start talking about signaling, but you don't have to adopt it all at once. But it can make a major difference when you're trying to figure out how to defend. You can look at the dummy, remember the bidding, and count the tricks that the declarer has. You may not be able to come up with exactly the precise number, but you can get pretty close usually. Or, and here's another use of counting, we count everything in case you can't tell. Here are points, tricks, and distribution. Sometimes you can figure out from the distribution that the declarer has 2 5-card suits. That leaves him only 3 cards in the other 2. So right now we know what 10 of his cards are. We don't know exactly what they are yet, but as the play progresses, you can come pretty close to figuring it out. As I said earlier, the number one choice when it's available to you in terms of defense is forcing the declarer to lose control of the hand. How do you do that? By forcing the declarer to trump in his hand, the long trump hand, as many times as possible. When that happens, he has to abandon his side suit winners. There are rather extreme cases when the defenders can end up taking over the hand. Usually when you're looking at a forcing defense, one of the defenders will have 4 trumps and may even have 5. I've played a couple of hands lately that had 5-0 trump splits in them, and they are awful, as I'm sure you can imagine. 4-1 is bad enough, but 5-0 is just horrendous. So the goal here is to get control of the trump suit. And when you do that, then you maximize the potential for taking defensive tricks. And as I said, this form of defense takes priority over all of the others when it can be done. It can't always be done because one of the defenders has to have at least 4 trumps in his hand usually. But boy, when it's available, it is absolutely incredible how well it works. So what has to happen? What might be the conditions where we might want to force the declarer to trump in his hand? Well, sometimes he has a 2-suited hand, 5-5 or 5-4. You may have a lot of count or a lot of tricks available in one of his side suits. When you have a long side suit and the declarer has 2 suits, usually he's 5-5 or 5-4. Forcing the declarer to rough in his own hand is particularly effective when he has only 5 cards in his trump suit. All you have to do is force him to trump once, and all of a sudden the number of trumps he has matches the number that you have if you started with 4. When one of the defenders has 4 trumps in his hand, either you or you have a singleton and you suspect that your partner has 4, then this is when you should start thinking about the active defense right then. Now, when the declarer is playing a 4-3 trump fit, when he only starts with 4 trumps in his hand, it can be even easier to have him lose control of the hand. You know, they didn't find an 8-card fit anywhere. They had to stop at a low level, so they're playing a 4-3 trump fit. That's why we keep encouraging you guys as openers not to support your partner's major suit with only 3 of them, because playing 4-3 fits makes it even easier for the opponents to force your partner when he only has 7 trumps between them. It's very easy for him to lose control. And as I said, when you have 4 trumps in your hand, or you believe there's a good chance that your partner does, that is predictive of success in forcing the director. And anytime, the declarer rather, and anytime you can force the declarer to trump early in the hand, any of these conditions can lend themselves to a successful force. The reason that we want to do this is because if you make him use his trumps to control your long suit, then that means he's going to have a hard time drawing the trumps. If you can force him to use his trumps, you then make it impossible for him to draw them and then be able to cash his side suit winners. As I said earlier, when the force is in effect, the declarer has to abandon his side suit winners because his trump holding has been shortened so much he can't draw trumps. And this situation often happens when the declarer has a 2-suited hand. And as I said, it's easiest when the declarer has a relatively short trump suit, either 4 or 5 cards in it. It's much harder when he has 6. When all of this happens, the reason the defenders are successful is because the declarer ends up unable to cash any winners he has in that second suit. And this same condition can apply when the trumps don't break evenly. You know, when we have 8 cards between us, we are always hoping for that 3-2 break. But about 28% of the time, they're going to break 4-1, not 3-2. And when the declarer has only a 5-card suit, if you can make him trump even once, then all of a sudden he has the same number of trumps that you do, and he has to use all of his to draw yours. So when that happens, do you lead a trump? No, absolutely not. The worst thing you can do when you think your partner has 4 trumps or you have 4 trumps yourself is to lead one of those trumps. What you do is lead your longest suit. If your partner has bid a suit, then lead it. If you have a 5-card suit in your hand, or maybe one that's even longer, lead it. You're hoping, especially if the declarer has a 2-suited hand, that he's short in that suit and will be forced to use his trumps to take the trick. And even if you have to lead from a broken tennis, say from King Jack 10, small, small, that is still the right thing to do in this situation. Normally, that's a very risky lead. But when you have a void in trumps, or maybe only a singleton, there's a really good chance that your partner has 4 trumps in his hand. So help him out by leading your longest suit in that one, because when this works, the rewards are just incredible. Some very high scores have been achieved using this technique, believe me. Here's an example. East opens a spade. West bids 3 no trump. And in most bidding systems, this is a choice of places to play. Basically, West is telling his partner, I have 3-card support for you, but my hand is completely flat. I have 4-3-3-3 distribution, and I have an opening hand with 3-card support. Do you want to play 3 no trump, or do you want to play 4 of your suits? Well, East bid again, showing 5-4 shape, at least here, saying I have 5 spades and at least 4 hearts, and I'm not particularly balanced, and I'm not very interested in no trump. Please pick, partner. So West bids 4 spades. Now that means that North and South are defending. And I think you can see here that South has a pretty obvious opening lead here, the Queen of Clubs. Then he plays the Jack. East plays the King. North plays the Ace. And declarer trumps it. Which card should South play after the declarer leads the 10 of diamonds at trick 3? How can we defeat this contract? We know that the declarer started with only 1 club. This strongly leads us to believe that East has either a 5-4-3-1 or 5-4-2-1 distribution, because after all, he bid spades and hearts, indicating at least 5-4, right? That information is out there. So now, if you stopped and counted when the dummy hit the table after you led, you know that your partner has no more high cards. South has 7 points in his hand. The dummy has 17 points, and East opens. So what does all this mean? This means that that ace of clubs that your partner played on the second trick is the only thing he had in his hand. He does not have another high card. You're not going to set this contract by taking tricks with high cards. So what South needs to do here, after taking the ace of diamonds, is put another club on the table, forcing South to trump again, shortening his trump holding. Now we're in 4 spades, and you started with 4 trumps in your hand. If declarer trumps again, he now has fewer trumps than you do. He obviously has some heart winners because he bid them. Is he going to be able to get them? You have a singleton. He's not, is he? South ends up having more trumps than the declarer does, and declarer loses control of the hand. So with only 7 points in the South hand and 4 points in the North hand, and a whole gob of points between East and West, this hand is defeated because they chose a very effective form of defense. And the only clue that South had from the bidding was that South had at least, or the declarer had at least 5 spades and at least 4 hearts. 2 suited hand, declined no trump, meaning it's unbalanced. And I'm sitting here looking at 4 trumps in my hand. I know my partner can't have much. I don't want to lead my singleton heart simply because declarer bid the suit. If my partner has an honor in that suit, I'm going to finesse him, right? So I have the top of a sequence lead here. You know, I've said many, many times that the top of a sequence is your first choice here. But I've ended up hitting declarer short suit. I have an outside entry and I can force him again. By the time he's used up 2 trumps, I now have 1 more than he does. So the forcing defense is one that if it's there and you can see the possibility that it will work, go for it. It may not work, but my goodness, if it does, you can get some very good scores defending that way. Now, another means of defense is defending actively. And you want to defend actively when your tricks may disappear. Well, how are your tricks going to disappear? Well, many times you may see that the dummy has bid and rebid a suit, indicating a nice long suit, and they've ended up in a game somewhere. If the declarer has enough time, he can set up that suit and pitch any losers he has on it. So when you know that this is liable to happen, then all of a sudden, all of these nice passive leads that we talk about so much take a back seat, and it's time to defend aggressively. As I said, you want to defend actively when there's a long-running suit in one of the opponent's hands. The gambling 3 no trump is an opening bid of 3 no trump, and it indicates a 7-card running minor. When you can look at your hand and see that the side suits are breaking evenly, that means that if a declarer has a 4-3 side suit, that he has a good chance of getting 4 tricks from that suit. Lots of times there's enthusiastic bidding. Somebody may have Q-bid a control, making a slam try. Anytime tricks can go away, if you know that one of the opponents has a highly distributional hand, then if you suspect that declarer has a singleton and a side suit, and you have the ace in that side suit, you probably ought to put it on the table. When you're defending actively, leading aces without the king is common. Underleading kings is common. Underleading broken tennises is common. These are very aggressive leads, but in this situation, they're called for. What if it doesn't work and declarer makes the bid anyway? Well, if you needed to defend actively, then defending passively was never going to work anyway. So you're not defeating the contract unless you defend actively. So if it doesn't work, defending passively wasn't going to work either. So when it's time to defend actively, you absolutely have to do that. But when you have safe tricks, and this is most of the time, you want to defend very passively. Most of the time, you will defend passively. What does that mean? You sit back. You don't grab tricks. If declarer finesses and you win an honor, then maybe you lead that suit right back to him. Or you lead the suit that your partner led if he was on opening lead. You don't break new suits for the declarer or take away guesses. When you break new suits for the declarer, often you're eliminating guesswork for him. So you don't want to do that. When you lead, don't finesse yourself. Lead something that is just basically worthless. If you finesse your partner, then declarer could have done the same thing. Remember that. If you lead from 3 small against a contract and it finesses your partner's king, well, then the declarer was always going to be able to do that. When these conditions exist, don't do the declarer's work for him. Make him earn his tricks. Now, how do we know when these conditions exist? Well, there's no evidence of a strong side suit. In other words, the defender didn't bid and rebid a suit, whether he jumped or not. Maybe the declarer opened 2 clubs and the dummy has hit the table and it's very weak, has 5 or 6 points in it, and that's all. This is a classic example. When one hand is very strong and the other one is very weak, the declarer is going to have a hard time getting to that weak hand to take finesses. So just let him play the hand from his hand. I can tell you from experience that there's nothing worse than having to play a no trump contract when you have a very strong hand and the dummy is weak. You can't get to the dummy to take finesses, and it's just awful. And experienced defenders won't break a new suit for you. Now, if there's a bad split, if you can see, for instance, that one of the side suits, you have 5 or 6 cards in it. If there's a bad split, defend passively. If the hands are a misfit, what does a misfit mean? Well, they couldn't find a fit in a major suit, so they ended up in some low-level no-trump contract. Anytime you're defending against a no-trump contract, slam contract, or any grand slam contract, you never underlead an honor. You defend very passively against a no-trump slam or a grand slam of any kind. Do not give the declarer his 12th or 13th trick. The best way to do that is not to finesse yourself. Chances are that the declarer, say if he's in 6 no trump, probably has 10 or 11 tricks off the top. And if you underlead an honor against a no trump slam, you are in effect presenting him with the trick he needs. Unless your partner has the queen in the suit, say if you underlead a king, unless your partner has the queen to help you, it is not going to be productive. And when you do that, then you have taken away the guess also from the declarer. Remember, when the opponents are in 6 no trump, they have about 33 points between them. If you're sitting there looking at a king and a couple of jacks, your partner doesn't have anything. Your partner has nothing. So defend very passively against 6 no trump or any grand slam. When the opponents kind of have crept along, bid tentatively, feeling their way along, you can kind of tell when opponents are doing that they don't know exactly where to go. They may tank for a minute or two, and in particular, with less experienced players, they may have overbid. So you want to be passive when the opponents have overbid. And when you have key cards in their suit, honors in their suit, be passive. Be passive. Make the declarer find those tricks. Now, the most common situation that will tell you that you need to play passively is the lack of an outside source of tricks for the declarer. You can generally tell from the moment the dummy hits the table whether or not there's an outside suit there. One of the best indications for defending passively is when the dummy hits the table and it's balanced and it has just about the number of points that your opponent promised. And that tells you right then, when the dummy is balanced, that you want to play passively. On the other hand, if the dummy tables a long suit, particularly one that has stuff at the top of it, maybe he has a 6-card diamond suit. Now, all of a sudden, uh-oh, if the declarer has the ace in that suit, then he's going to be pitching a lot of losers on it as soon as he draws the trumps. That means that you have to switch tactics and start taking your tricks as soon as possible. In general, thinking about the bidding and looking at the dummy will provide you with the clues that you need to know whether to defend actively or passively. And if there's no strong indication that you need to be active, defend passively. What does that mean? That just means returning a suit that the declarer has led. Returning your partner's opening lead, breaking no new suits. If there's a misfit between those two hands, a good defender tries to make just the most passive, innocuous, non-threatening lead that he can to try to keep from helping the declarer. Here's a little tip that I didn't learn until maybe 3 years ago. We tell everybody, if you don't have an honor sequence to lead against a no trump contract, to lead the fourth from your longest and strongest. Well, you got to be kind of careful when leading low from a 4-card suit with a lone honor at the top. Even when you hold 2 honors and you lead low, say you have a suit topped by the king, queen, and your next highest card's the 7. Maybe you have the king, queen, 7, 2 in your hand. And the natural inclination is to lead the 2. And lo and behold, you see the jack on the table. Your partner can only produce the 9 and declarer takes a trick with the 10. Your partner doesn't have the ace because if he'd had the ace, he'd have played it. So here you sit. You have given the declarer a trick he didn't deserve. That's why you see so many experienced players leading low from 3 cards in an attempt to try to find his partner's suit. Rather than leading a suit like the one I just described, maybe you have a suit that's queen, 10, 8, 3. Leading the 3 may produce one trick for you eventually, but if you sit back and let the declarer lead that suit and try to develop it, you might get a trick with the queen and the 10. So this is why more experienced players usually make passive leads rather than leading from a 4-card raggedy, really sad suit that has only 1 honor at the top. Now, here's another example. Pardon me just a minute. All right, that's a spam call. Here's an example. You're on lead.
Yeah, and we've got a question when you get to a
All right. Oh, okay. We'll have a question right now. How about that? Mm-hmm. Yes, Susie.
I just heard you talk about leading low from a worthless 3-card suit.
Yeah.
You used to talk about the Boston, the top of something and the bottom.
Bottom of something, top of nothing.
Right.
That's some people lead that way, but not everybody does. Especially on opening leads, many people lead low from 3 small or low from 4 small. Does that make you think your partner think you have an honor? It might, but it's not too hard to tell a couple of 3 plays into the hand that that's what partner did. And once you know that your partner is maybe leading passively, or maybe just trying to find your suit because he has no outside entries, then you become more accustomed to it. The first several times one of my partners did that to me, I found it very frustrating, to tell you the truth, because I'd return the lead thinking my partner had something, and no, he didn't. When I'm leading from 4, I like to lead this, and there are 4 worthless cards. I like to lead the second highest one. If the highest one's a 9 or a 10, I don't like to lead those cards. But if I have a second highest card from 4, that is the 7 or the 8, then my partner will generally know that I don't care whether I get that suit back or not. So sometimes if I have 4, I do that. but it's not unheard of for me to lead the two from 7-4-2. Since I have become a little more experienced and have people say, Susan, your opening leads are way too active. You know, you need to be more passive. It may look non-productive because after all, they tell us no trump is a race. We've got to set up our suit before they do. Well, that in general is true. And that's what we teach initially. But in case you haven't figured out, a lot of advancing in bridge is unlearning things that you learned at the beginning. And that is true with opening leads. I can't tell you how many things I've had to learn to do differently. But there's only so much that novice players can absorb. And so we try to teach them what makes sense early on, because sometimes it is successful. But nothing says that you and your partner have to adopt those kinds of leads if you don't want to. But I will tell you that by and large, opening leads are a crapshoot. Very often the killing lead is one that no one would ever pick. You know, you would never lead that suit. So you and your partners have to discuss how we're going to do it. Are we going to try to learn to be passive? If you can just learn to be passive most of the time, I think you'll find that your results improve. Does that answer your question? Okay, good deal. All right, now then, if you're sitting west and you're on lead and you shift to the 2 of diamonds here, this is a very, very aggressive lead. This is what I was talking about, leading low from a broken tennis. If your partner has the ace or the queen of diamonds, then you've struck gold here. But what if the declarer has the ace queen? You've just given him a trick he's not entitled to, haven't you? Because he's entitled to a trick with the ace, but not with the queen when you're sitting behind him with the king. So why do defenders do things like that? Well, maybe in the auction and the early play, you think that declarer's diamond losers are going to go away. Then your best chance to get a trick with the diamond king would be to shift to the diamond 2, hoping your partner has the queen or the ace. But on most deals, you will be playing passively and you would lead anything here but a diamond. Only in the case that you thought declarer's diamond losers were going to go away would you ever lead this suit. I mean, there's a reason the opponents have the bid. They have more points than your side does. So when you underlead something like this, very often the declarer is sitting there with the ace queen in his hand. Once in a while, your partner will have the ace and he'll return the lead through declarer's queen right through your king jack. But it happens so seldom that it makes this a very, very risky lead. This would be an example of a very aggressive lead when you think that your diamond tricks are going to go away. And obviously, of course, this is in a trump contract, because in a no trump contract, they won't necessarily, will they? But if you see a long running minor suit on the board in a no trump contract, well, then you got to try to get your diamond tricks before declare starts running that other suit that's long too. So there are a lot of factors that go into this decision. But remember, on most hands, you'll be defending passively. Now, here's another example. Declarer's playing 4 hearts. Now, if he has diamond losers, and this is the slide previously, if he has any diamond losers, he's going to lose those diamonds, whether you lead the suit or not, unless he can discard them. So if you don't see a setup suit or a suit that can be easily set up in the dummy, don't worry about leading the diamond. Defend passively. If the other suits in the dummy are worthless, this is not the time to lead the diamond. But if the dummy tables with a suit that's ace, king, queen, jack, 10, 9, 8, or some such thing, doesn't even have to be that good to be imposing, then the defense has to get their diamond tricks right now, because any diamond losers that the declarer has is going to go away on this side suit that's very imposing. Now, is there any way to know whether the dummy has a long suit before it actually is on the table and you can see it? Well, the best thing that you can do is remember the bidding. Opener bids a heart, responder bids a spade, opener bids 2 hearts, responder bids 4 spades. And I don't care how many hearts you have, we're playing spades. Now, in this case, responder didn't promise any spades here at all. He promised 6 hearts with a minimum hand. And you shouldn't be surprised to see something like this ace, king, jack, 10, 9, 7 here in the dummy. This kind of auction almost always calls for an aggressive opening lead. That's because you know from the bidding that the dummy has a 6-card heart suit. And declarer is short in hearts. Even after opener rebid his hearts, he said, nope, playing 4 spades. If he has to trump a couple of cards to set the suit up, he has enough spades in his hand to do it. And you know he's short in hearts. So this means I've got to get my tricks in. I've got to get them now before they go away on that heart suit. What would be an aggressive lead? An ace without the king under it. Maybe your partner will give you a high card saying, come on, I've got the king. Or perhaps you have a broken tennis that's king, jack, 9, 4, 2. You lead the 4, hoping that partner has the ace and can shoot one back through the declarer for you. But here's a different auction. 1 heart, 2 hearts, 3 hearts, 4 hearts. This is called limping into game. Nobody bid really enthusiastically. I would say this guy probably has 8 or 9 points to go with this 17-ish. And so he said he bids the game. This kind of auction calls for a passive defense, even on the opening lead. Even on the opening lead. Now, another way that you can defend and develop tricks is to create trump tricks for yourself and your partner. That can include roughing some of the declarer's winners or promoting trump tricks for your side. Sometimes that works very, very effectively to set a contract. How can you create trump tricks? Well, if you're short and nobody, the declarer didn't bid the suit, for instance, if you have a short suit, a singleton against a trump contract, so long as your partner has enough points in his hand to have an entry, then a singleton can be a very good lead. Strangely enough, the weaker your hand, the better the singleton lead is. Simply because the fewer points you have, the more your partner has and will be more likely to have an entry, whether it's in that suit or maybe he has a high trump card where he can get the lead early and fire back your opening lead and give you a rough. That's you don't often think of it that way, but if you're sitting there and you have 11 points in your hand and the opponents are in game, leading a singleton is not likely to be successful. Why is that? Your partner cannot possibly have an entry. So in that case, all you're doing is helping the declarer set up the suit. So you should choose another lead. So sometimes when you're short in the unbid suit, this makes a very good lead. Other times, not so much. When you have length in the opponent's side suit, that probably means that your partner is short in that suit. Maybe you have a very weak hand and you don't see any other line of defense. but to try to rough something. You can use trump promotions. You can promote your trump honors the same way that you do when you're the declarer. If you have the king, queen, jack in the suit, you drive out the ace and all of a sudden you have 2 tricks. Well, if you have the king, queen of trumps, once the ace is gone, then your queen is promoted into a winner. Uppercuts. Uppercuts are very, very effective. We'll talk about these in just a minute. I won't get into them here. Or you can rough the declarer's tricks. Leading short suits and roughing out declarer's tricks are the most widely used lines when the forcing defense is not available, but sometimes it's abused. Very often a defender short suit is one of declarer's longer side suits. And unless you think very carefully, in other words, say, can my partner have an entry? Then leading a singleton may not be productive at all. If you have most of the missing points in your partnership, then leading a singleton is virtually pointless. All you have done is help the declarer set up that suit. Now then, experienced players look to get roughs when they have no natural trump tricks. For instance, if you have a queen third in the trump suit and you've got a singleton and you'd like to get a rough, generally when you have a natural trump trick, it is better to take the natural trump trick than to rough and give up the trump trick. When they expect an entry to bring off the rough. In other words, if I have a high trump honor in my hand and my partner has led a card that looks suspiciously like a singleton, then I'm going to be looking to taking that high trump honor, whether it's the ace or king or whatever, as soon as possible, so that I can try to give my partner a rough while he still has a trump left. And sometimes you're just plain desperate and you can't see any tricks anywhere else. You look to try to rough something. But there's an even better line than just roughing. Creating trump tricks where you didn't have one before is more effective. And that's accomplished by either promotion, like I talked about earlier, or using the uppercut. In a trump promotion play, the defenders force the declarer back into a corner where he either has to rough high or get over roughed. If he roughs high, then that often will produce that minor honor in partner's hand, and it'll make it become a winner, because maybe the declarer had to trump with the king to avoid being over roughed with a jack. And whether the defender sitting behind the declarer has the jack or whether the defender sitting in front of him has it, that card can be promoted. Same thing with a queen. A queen doubleton can be promoted into a winner when you force the declarer to trump high to avoid being over roughed. That's why when you have the opportunity to rough, it is important to rough as high as you can. Don't rough with the 2 if you have the 10 in your hand. Make the declarer use a high trump to take the trick. Now, of course, if we don't want the declarer to rough, we can cut down on his roughing power by leading trumps. Most of you have heard the expression, if you've been around the bridge table very long, when in doubt, lead trumps. Well, I don't know who made that up, but a more accurate phrase would be, when there is no doubt, lead trumps. Well, lots of times there's no doubt. One of the principal times you want to lead a trump is when declarer is playing in his second suit. Do you think his first suit is all winners? That is very seldom the case. We know that the dummy has no support for that first suit because he didn't support, right? So the declarer is going to want to use the shortness in the dummy and the dummy's small trumps to rough out any losers that he has in that first suit. So when the declarer is playing in that second suit, a trump needs to hit the table. When a mere suit preference was taken, in other words, opener bids a heart, responder bids a spade, opener rebids 2 clubs, responder bids 2 hearts. Remember how we've talked about this only shows a preference. It shows fewer than a minimum hand with fewer than 3 cards in opener suit. He has merely taken a preference. If he had support in a minimum hand, he should support with support by bidding 2 hearts immediately. When he doesn't and just chooses the heart suit as a preference, that just screams fewer than 3 card support. Let's take those trumps off the dummy before the declarer can make use of them. Now, if you see extreme shortness in your hand in the trump suit, and you suspect that your partner has a lot of them, sometimes you want to force the declarer. But if the declarer has a relatively balanced hand and say not a 2-suiter, we're not going to be able to force him. So what we're going to have to do is lead his trumps. In other words, if you can tell from the bidding that the opener has a relatively balanced hand, then and you have a lot of he's won the bid and he has the majority of trumps, but maybe just barely, then you might want to lead a trump here. And if the hand is a misfit, that almost always calls for a trump lead. Now, here's one that you don't see very often, but is very, very effective. From the bidding, if you can tell that dummy has shortness in a suit, maybe he bid 2 suits and he raised partner's 3rd one. That means he's short in the 4th suit and there's going to be some roughing going on. Lead a trump. When the dummy denied no trump, when in other words, he was invited with 2 no trump and maybe he went back to one of the opponents or one of his partner's first bid suits, he has a flaw in his hand for no trump and didn't want to play there, and he went back to that trump suit, lead a trump. If you have control of the other suits, for instance, if you have honors, stuff in the other suits, if you underlead one of them, that's a very aggressive lead, isn't it? Sometimes one of the most passive leads you can make is a trump. So when you say, if you have a couple of kings and a queen in the side suits and you don't want to underlead one of them, lead a trump. As I said before, if you finesse your partner, you haven't done anything that the declarer couldn't have done. And when your opponents are sacrificing, say you bid to a very enthusiastic 4 spades game and they decide to sacrifice in 5 diamonds, put a trump on the table. One of the ways they're going to try to keep their losses down when they're sacrificing is by roughing losers. So one of the most effective things you can do when the opponents are sacrificing is lead the trump. Now, here's a little bit more about when declarer is playing in his second suit. And I pretty much went over all of these. The best strategy is to lead trumps at every opportunity. Now, when you have a strong holding in the trump suit, you can take control of the situation, take ownership of that trump situation. And when the declarer has not shown a 2-suited hand, or in other words, indicated shortness, then it can behoove you to lead trumps. Once you own the trump suit, you're the declarer now. Declarer has lost control and he's just done for. Leading trumps as opposed to the other suits on these particular types of hands where the opener has a more or less balanced hand can make a tremendous difference in the final result. If you make a one level takeout double and your partner passes, converting it to penalty, if you have a trump in your hand, after all, you're short in the opener suit, lead it. Lead it. The reason for that is we want to get rid of the declarer's trumps, so all of the winners that are in your hand can then be cashed. So when your partner passes a takeout double and converts it to penalty, lead a trump when you have one. So it's your hand, but the opponents have decided to take a sacrifice. When you, as the defenders, have control of the other three suits, in other words, the hand belongs to you. And like I said earlier, maybe you bid to 4 spades and the opponents decided to sacrifice in 5 diamonds. You don't have control of the diamonds, but you do have control of the other 3 suits. Lead a trump. Lead a trump. You do that to protect the high cards that you have in your hands. When the opponents have taken a sacrifice, leading a trump is almost automatic in more experienced players. Now, it's not always easy to figure out when you should lead a trump, but they're not always predictable and they don't always work out. This is the same thing in the rest of this game. We go with what works most of the time in the cases that I've described. It's possible, though, if you made a mistake on the opening lead and you see that you should have led a trump, you can still recover. You have the chance to recover after the opening lead, particularly if you led an ace in something, and you can look at the dummy and say, oh my goodness, I should have led a trump. Well, there's still time to switch. When shortness appears in the dummy and there's no source of other tricks for declarer to use to dispose of his losers, switch to a trump as soon as possible there. So it's possible that you can still switch and make an effective lead, even if your initial lead wasn't the right one. So what does passive defense look like? I like to give this example in lessons of a frozen suit. If this direction here is north and south, this holding of Jack third and Queen third is known as a frozen suit. If the defenders open this suit from either side of the table, they will get only 2 tricks. But if declarer opens the suit, the defenders will get 3 tricks. Why is that? Well, if you lead the 2, second hand plays low. Remember, this is barring a defensive error. If second hand flies up here with the king, then you will get a trick. Second hand plays low, you have to play the queen. This guy takes his ace. Next time, if you think, well, I need to try to get a trick from the jack, and you lead toward the jack, well, the king takes the jack and then he leads one back, and here's the now good 10 in the other hand. There are 3 tricks here for the defense if the declarer touches this suit. But if he can get the defenders to lead it for him, he'll get a trick. This is why you don't want to break new suits for the declarer. Don't open a new suit. Make the declarer do that whenever possible. So I've got a couple of examples here, and then we're going to quit because we're about halfway through. South ends up in a 4-spade game after his partner gives him a limit raise. And West is on lead. The first thing he should do is discard the idea of leading a diamond. I think you all know why. I've said 1,000 times, we never lead a low card from a suit headed by the ace against a suit contract. It's the single worst lead in bridge. And we don't lead an ace not supported by the king. I mean, look what happens if he does. If he leads the ace of diamonds, declarer now has a good queen and a good king. He's entitled to one trick from this holding, but not from two. He's looking at the king of clubs here, and he knows that that's a pretty aggressive lead under leading a king. You know, he just doesn't want to do that. There's no indication here that he needs to lead aggressively. Leading low from a king doubleton in hearts is absolutely foolhardy. That's like asking to lose that king. So what does that leave? That leaves the trump suit. So following the bottom of something, top of nothing guideline, if that's what you and your partner have chosen, some people would lead the 4, low from 3. Other people would lead top of nothing, the 7. Notice that this gives away nothing. The opponents have the spade suit locked up. Now, if declarer wins the opening lead and draws the rest of them and leads a diamond toward his king, what should West do? What should he do? Should he hop up with the ace? No, that's the same thing as leading the ace on the opening lead, isn't it? It may be hard, but you have to play low. The king will win, as you knew it would. And declarer says, oh, good. Well, okay, got a diamond trick. Now he leads back. He may be hoping that East has it and just decided not to cover. Leads the small one back to the queen, and now West wins an honor with his ace of diamonds. We're still playing passively. If we decide to underlead the king of clubs or the king of hearts, it's the same situation as we had. So what should happen? Just return another diamond. As it happens, declarer will rough it. Now then, no matter how he plays now, he has to lose a trick to the king of hearts. And since he has not been able to get one of the, notice, East is never getting the lead here. It's always going to be West. Since he was never able to get one of the opponents to break the club suit for him, he has to lose 2 tricks in the suit, no matter how he plays it. If he leads the jack, trying to finesse, it will lose to the king. If he leads low to the 10, it will lose to the king. And in fact, what should happen is we should have the jack of clubs. East should cover. Remember, second hand, cover an honor with an honor. There's no touching honor here in the dummy. And East has to hope that this helps his partner. So if the jack is led off the dummy, he needs to play the queen, and now the ace has to be played. West will play small. Well, he can go back to the dummy with a trump if he has to, and lead another club. And when he plays the 10, it loses to the king, and now the 9 is good. So declarer loses a heart, a diamond, and 2 clubs. But notice, if West breaks the club suit for him, he loses only 1 club and makes the bid. That is how passive defense works and why it is so important. If any of you guys have any questions about this material, we're going to pick up with this on slide 19 next week. And be sure to email me if you have questions. And thanks for coming, everybody. Hi, this is Susan. Thanks for stopping by the Oklahoma Collective's YouTube channel. Basically, this channel shows recordings of our free 1-hour bridge lessons for advancing players that we offer every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you would like to join us, send your contact information to the email address shown on the screen, and we'll be happy to send you the link. If you would like to follow our channel and be notified when a new recording is uploaded,
just click the Oklahoma Collective button below. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.